How's it going, guys? Slippery Jim here. Today I'm going to show you guys the ultimate multi-tool layout for No Man's Sky next. This is inspired by a post I saw on Reddit by InfinityDrags, and he provided a very helpful chart for new players in terms of the layouts that he felt were optimal, and his builds as well for different things like the multi-tool and the exosuit. Again, that he felt were optimal layouts to get the max potential. I found that very helpful for a lot of people in terms of explaining the adjacency bonus that you get, which I'll go into a bit later. But it's not really optimal in terms of the build, and particularly a comment from GearsOfFate was very helpful in that regard as well, again on that same post in Reddit. But I'm going to explain my build here and the reasoning behind why I think this is a better build and the ultimate build at the moment in No Man's Sky next. Obviously, this is my opinion, but it's also based on extensive testing, which I'll show some of later, and also explain some options that you have depending on what you want to maximize when you adapt this to your own multi-tool build. So first of all, let's just get out of the way straight away that this is a next generation save. So we do have the mining beam fixed third slot from the top left, as opposed to the old saves that will have it fixed in the far top left corner. So just keep that in mind depending on your save in terms of using this build as well. But it is very flexible. In terms of the reasoning behind the specific weapons that I'm using here in the layout, basically, let's look at the plasma launcher. In my view, that's the most powerful weapon you can have to easily take down armored doors, and also the sentinel walkers and stuff like that. So it's very essential that you have that in your multi-tool. The mining beam, obviously, you get from the start, but also the layout here is going to maximize the damage of the beam itself, and so the speed with which you can mine. I'm using the pulse splitter. You can use the weapon of your choice, but I find this a very high damage, high DPS weapon that is useful both close range and long range, and can also pierce armor, although it does chew through ammo pretty quick, but ammo is easy to craft and easy to come by. The other thing we're using here, obviously, is our analysis visor and the scanner. And the layout that I'm using here maximizes the amount of value you get out of flora and fauna scans in terms of units. But there's an alternative layout I'll show you guys later that you can use if you want to get a few extra meters or space cubits or whatever the measurement that they're using for the range is. If you want to get more range out of that, there's another slightly different layout you can use where you'll lose almost, you'll get almost the same units from scans as well. We're chucking in the personal force field, which I like to use, so you can have that on at all times so you don't accidentally blow yourself up with your plasma launcher, and also the combat scope. But they're optional, and you'll notice there's a blank slot as well. So if you want to chuck in the bolt caster instead of the pulse splitter, you can put that in because that has an extra mod. And there you go, you can put your extra mod in there instead as well. In terms of the exact layout of the modules, we're going to go into that in a great deal of detail and explain the testing that I did and the results that I came away with later in this video. And we'll get into that shortly. But if this is all you want, this build right here, you can screenshot that and go away and adapt it to your needs. Now, in terms of the testing that I did, I'll just let you guys know that with the upgrade modules, I used 3 S-class modules per item that they applied to, and I used the 3 modules with identical stats for each module, just for the sake of consistency and simplicity. And this was used across all of the testing, exactly the same modules, so that the results were accurate and meaningful between the different builds, just to let you guys know. The other thing is, when you're looking at the damage potential numbers on the far right of your multi-tool screen, take those with a very large grain of salt, because they don't, for instance, take into account the plasma launcher damage, which is the highest damaging unit we have applied to the weapon, which is crazy. And also, they weren't consistent with the actual results of the damage that the different weapons were doing in my testing. So first thing we're going to test here on this build is the scan value. So we're just testing this particular plant here to get our scan value, which is 64,543. And coming over here, we're going to test out the mining beam damage as well. So it's 124. And next up, we'll be testing the plasma launcher damage. You just want to be careful with this thing. You can see a little grave there on the right-hand side from a mistake that happened earlier. So with the with armor, you want to make sure you see the armor indicator before you fire, so it doesn't bounce back and kill you. So 3,101 was the plasma launcher damage, and the final thing we'll test is the pulse splitter, and in this case, the average damage is 540, which is not too bad at all. With the pulse splitter, I was not using any of the ricochet modules, just keep that in mind. So let's compare that build with the so-called optimal build that I saw posted to Reddit that I mentioned earlier. And this was a build posted by InfinityDrags. I don't want to sort of detract from the guy too much because he's very, very helpful. This is a very good build, a very useful information that he provided. But just to show you the comparison with the stats and why the layout isn't optimal. If we look at the scanner, his scanner layout is exactly the same. So as we would expect, we actually have exactly the same scan value, 64,543, and we get exactly the same scanner range as well. In terms of the damage from the mining laser, we get 120, which is 4 less than the layout sorry, that I recommended earlier. The pulse cannon similarly is significantly less damage because he has the modules laid out in a line rather than the optimal block formation. So he gets 2,992 rather than 3,101. With the pulse splitter, he's getting 495, which is 45 damage less per shot from the layout I showed you guys with the cross formation. Now, he has jammed the extra weapon, the scatter blaster, in there, but that really takes away from the optimization of both itself and the other modules you have on the multi-tool, besides which the pulse splitter can do everything that the scatter blaster can do anyway. But next, what I want to explain is the adjacency bonus you get with modules and weapons. So basically, in No Man's Sky, when you place the upgrade modules next to the actual weapon that they're upgrading and next to each other, you get an adjacency bonus indicated by a colored ring around the connected modules. Now, as you can see in this particular test, we separated all of our modules so none of them were adjacent or next to each other or the actual weapon itself. And you can see here we're getting max damage of 441 with the pulse splitter. So what happens if we actually put the modules adjacent to each other instead? So instead of separating the modules, we're going to line them all up for this test so that they get the adjacency bonus by being next to each other. And you'll notice that's indicated by the blue colored outline around the modules. So now in terms of damage, what we're getting is we're getting 477 compared to the 441 due to that adjacency bonus damage from that layout of the modules. However, you can take it a step further by actually changing the formation of the modules, so not only are they adjacent, but they're actually connected on more sides, either vertically or horizontally, than if you have them in just a long row. So in this case, we're using a block formation, and we'll see what kind of outcome we get with our damage buff in this particular test using this slightly different format. So remember in the last test where they were in a long row, with the adjacency bonus they were getting 477 damage on average. Here we got a few critical hits, but for the most part, the majority of damage is 522, which is, again, a significant increase even with the previous test, which had the adjacency bonus. So is it possible, though, to improve even further on that last formation of modules that we saw? Well, actually, yes, it is. And that's by this cross formation where you have the main weapon module in the middle and the upgrade modules and the tech arranged around it. So they're all touching the central weapon module. Let's see what kind of improvement we get on the last test here. So we have our helpful lab assistants over here. Now the last test we were getting 522. Well, you can see the average shots here that we're getting are 540. So that's why we're using this cross formation in our ultimate build setup for the multi-tool over the block formation. However, it's worth keeping in mind that this formation will not produce the same enhanced results for all weapon types. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to show you guys the build that I did with the full build adapted to fit the bolt caster with the modules in that same cross formation that we saw work best with the pulse splitter. So the results for this though actually turned out quite differently. So let's take a look at the damage numbers that we get with the cross formation for the bolt caster here. And just firing here at the armored door, we're getting 405 as our max damage off the bolt caster. Now if we rearrange the bolt caster modules into the block formation, remember, which was second best for the pulse splitter, we're actually going to get increased damage in our test here. So let's just take a quick look at our damage against the armored door again. And we're getting 408s, which is an improvement. A slight improvement is true, but an improvement on our cross formation. So the best formation for the bolt caster is actually in a block rather than a cross. So if we test the other weapons as well in terms of comparing the block formation and the cross formation of modules, with the scatter blaster, the block formation actually gave us damage results of 2024 damage against this reinforced door. And if we put it in a cross formation here with all the modules attached to the main weapon in the center, we actually got improved damage of, as we'll see here in a second, 2120. In terms of the blaze javelin, this was a little bit of a surprising result for me. So in the block formation, the blaze javelin gives us 1878 damage against the armored door, and if we put it in the cross formation here instead, we actually get again an improved damage result of 1959, which is actually quite a significant improvement. Now with the plasma launcher, if we use a modified cross formation of modules here, what I call the T formation, because there's no actual tech, the plasma launcher, we get 3097 damage, but if we use the block formation, we actually get higher damage of 3101. If you're interested in the geology cannon, that actually only does 1789 with the optimal configuration. So just to summarize, I'm going to show you guys a quick graphic here that will show you clearly which module layout is best for which weapon or attachment for your multi-tool. The next test is the most interesting in terms of the outcome not matching my expectations, and that's for the analysis visor. So if we do the first test with the cross formation, the analysis visor in the middle, we have 1182.9 range for the scanner. And in terms of the scan value, the outcome that we get with this setup is actually 61,068 units. Now this next setup is interesting. What I went with was the block formation of modules, but with two of the upgrade modules adjacent to the waveform recycler, which is a scanner modification that you can add to your multi-tool. And what that does is it increases the recharge rate and importantly the scan range. So with this we get 1385.2 scan range, which is 12.8 more than even my ultimate build. But in terms of the scan value, we get 64,540, which is 3 units less. So you could very easily sacrifice that infinitesimally small amount of units that you lose out for the greatest scan range in this setup and swap this out in the build I posted at the start of this video. 3 units is not even enough to get you a GEC word, for goodness sake. So, you know, if all you want is units, go for that, which is what I personally went with. But this is probably a better setup in terms of the scanner range. So this is the final test on the analysis visor setup, and this is the block formation again, but this time we have the upgrades for the analysis visor adjacent to the analysis visor itself, and the other modules down the bottom. And this gives us the a pretty decent range of 1372.4, and it also gives us the highest possible scan value, which in this case is 64543 for those precious extra units. Alright guys, that is the guide. Hopefully it's helpful for some of you guys and gals out there that are still confused about the best way to lay out your modules and your weapons in your multi-tool in No Man's Sky Next. And if you appreciated this guide, please let me know in the comment section below. If you have any suggestions for improvements, they would be welcome as well. And consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. I'll be starting a No Man's Sky playthrough very soon, which I'm recording right now on this channel. And yeah, hopefully it should be a lot of fun and you guys can come along for the ride. But if not, thanks for stopping by anyway, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Slippery Jim out.